to start. And yes, the recording has begun here, so please make sure to be aware of that. All right, welcome everybody. Um, my name is Gary Childs. I'm one of the health sciences liaisons, and I'm physically based at the Hahnemann Library in the new college building in Center City here at Drexel University. Of course, we've got a few attendees out there today as well. And my job is to try to make you a little bit more comfortable with the product known as EndNote Online, sometimes called EndNote Web as well. And this is kind of a light version of EndNote. And I think this can work really nicely. It can also be used to share and back up an existing desktop or an installed library if you happen to be using the desktop version of EndNote on a computer. I happen to be using a Windows-based PC over here. I'm utilizing Chrome for a browser. And I would recommend, Chrome tends to work pretty well. Firefox tends to work pretty well for me. Safari can get a little funny sometimes, so I want to make sure to put that out there. And what we'll do today is start off with how to sign up for an EndNote Online account, which happens to be free. Anyone can do this. So even if it's somebody that's not a part of the university, they'll be able to sign up for an EndNote Online account regardless. The EndNote desktop product, though, is something that is licensed via Drexel. As a member of Drexel University, we can all download it as well. In the earlier parts of our session today, I'm going to be showing you exclusively EndNote Online. I'll show you how to move items from EBSCO's CINAHL database into EndNote Online. We'll also show the integration of EndNote Online with Microsoft Word. And then at the tail end of the session, I'll talk about sharing with and syncing with an EndNote desktop library too. So at this point, I'm going to navigate over to our library guides. In fact, the libraries have a number of different guides that are set up to help you with any research question that you might have. This helps as a quick jump start, and you can find a lot of tutorials via our library guides that we have offered here. From clicking on that link, this will bring me to a page where we can see an assortment of guides set up by school or college across the university. And in our lower right-hand corner, you'll also see a writing and publishing tab. I'm going to click on that. If you do go into the writing and publishing tab, you'll find a number of different guides, some related to authors' rights, citation management tools, infographics, and so on. Today, we're going to go into the EndNote Online guide. So you're going to find some video tutorials within this guide, as well as links and other helpful information related to EndNote Online. I'm just using this for the EndNote Online login link. I'll click on that now, and I'm going to sign into my EndNote Online account. If it's your first time using this product, you'll want to go to the registration section. Now, it's interesting. EndNote Online knows me pretty well. It kind of just auto logged me in. It's never done that before, but okay. So let me try to take a step back here just so you can see where that registration link is, just in case. So again, you'll see that registration link that's right here. And also, we can just log in once we've set up our account via this front page. You do not have to use a Drexel email account or anything like that. You can use a standard Gmail or whatever you happen to use. Once you've actually registered for your account, I'm going to sign in. does require a pretty complex password. You'll see the rules if you go through the registration process itself. And I found it's pretty unforgiving after you make a few password mistakes. It will sometimes say like, okay, you can't try to log in for a half hour. So please be aware of that. If you really don't remember your password, there is a forgot password link on the front page. Definitely do that before you lock yourself out. Now, I've been using EndNote Online a bit for demonstrations and that sort of thing. And this is just a library that I have here already has a bunch of citations in it for the moment, but if it's your first time using the product, this of course will be blank. So let me bring you through moving journal citations into EndNote Online itself, which is going to help us to help stay organized. It will allow us to share these citations with other people. It'll allow you to attach PDFs as well. And also, it's going to communicate back and forth with Microsoft Word. However, to have it communicate with Microsoft Word, there is something that you're going to want to do. And you'll find a downloadable here from the Downloads menu. And how it communicates to Microsoft Word is for a product known as Cite While You Write. So there's both a Windows and a Mac or Apple download that's available here. If you do want to make sure to try this plugin out after our session today, one thing I'll strongly suggest is once you download um, these installation files, please make sure to shut down any Microsoft Office product that you might be running, because that will interfere with the installation. Even if it's Outlook, if you do have Outlook running, it does lean heavily on Microsoft Word. So if you do have Outlook running, it will interfere with the installation. Make sure to shut all your programs down, but especially your Microsoft Office products before you would install the Cite While You Write plugin that's offered here. But I think you're going to like that feature a great deal. That's why a lot of people end up using EndNote. All right, I'm going to move back to my references. And now let's actually move some data in here. And I'm going to grab some information from CINAHL, the Cumulative Index to Nursing and Allied Health Literature. It's an EBSCO product. If you're familiar with EBSCO, there's a lot of databases that are libraries license that you may be very familiar with, things like PsycInfo as well, or Alt Health Watch. There are a number of different resources out there, like the Web of Science, that will talk to EndNote, and pretty much any database or tool, you're going to be able to export citation information from those resources or tools into EndNote. But granted, it's all about how good the data looks to make sure it'll look decent in your paper. And we'll talk about that a bit. But let's move in some data from CINAHL. So I'm just going to open up another window here, and I'm going to move back over to the library homepage. Once I'm here on the Drexel Library homepage, I'm going to go into our health sciences resources. And CINAHL happens to be linked at the very top of this page. So I'm going to click into that now. As you can see, I've got to sign into this. So yes, even librarians need to sign into these products. Great, we're in. Here we are with CINAHL, again, the Cumulative Index to the Nursing and Allied Health Literature. I am not going to do a complex CINAHL search today. I just want to do something that will get a pretty small amount of citations back that we can manipulate and send into EndNote Online. So I'm just going to mark where this says suggest subject terms. And I admittedly love dogs and companion animals a great deal. I'm just going to do a little search for pet therapy, not to be confused with PET therapy, like a PET scan. We're actually going to find pet therapy here, which is the introduction of an animal into the immediate surroundings of an individual or group as a medium of interaction with a therapeutic purpose. And we recently had two dogs come into the Drexel libraries to have a little bit of therapy time with our students here that were pretty stressed out. So it was a rather successful event. I'm going to click on the subject heading and run this search just so we can get a few article citations on screen. So this is pretty common. We go into a database, we do a search, we get some results. And for today, I'm going to limit these results down to academic journals. And what I want to do is just tell CINAHL that I'm interested in a few of these items. So a lot of databases are going to work in a very similar fashion. There's going to be a little system where we can mark an item to let a database know that we're interested in it. EBSCO happens to use this foldering system and has folder icons. Other systems might have a place where you can make a little check mark over here next to the number of the article. What I'll do is just click on these folders here and add a few items into a temporary folder. I just want to grab enough items that we can have just to kind of play around a little bit with a few of the different features of EndNote Online. Robotic pets, oh, okay, I'm going to skip that one. And admittedly, I'm a little bit more familiar with canine-based pet therapy, but hey, pet insects, why not? Great. I've added a few different items here into a folder, and I'm going to scroll up to the very top of the screen. I'm going to go into this folder, and then I need to move this information into EndNote Online. So I first need to select the items, and if you were still revising, you could select them one by one, but in this case, I'm going to select all of them. Now that I've marked all of these items, I want to export them. And here's something I want to be very careful with in terms of pointing this out. And this is one of the reasons why I made sure to choose a EBSCO-based database today, is you might see this direct export feature where you can directly export items to EndNote Web. I'm going to say this has been a little unreliable. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It's the nature of EBSCO and EndNote. They tend to feud a little bit at some points. So I'm going to recommend that we use this direct export in RIS format. This will work perfectly fine, and I'll show you how to handle this. And I've never had an issue importing items from EBSCO into EndNote Online using RIS format. So I'm going to save this. And you can see it put this little delivery RIS file over here. That's just in my downloads folder. Now I'm going to go into EndNote Online, and I'm going to bring or import that delivery file into EndNote Online. And we can do that via the collect feature here. Once we mouse over the collect menu, we'll be able to select import references. We just need to tell EndNote what we want now. And I'm guessing this text is going to look pretty small on your screen, so I'm going to try blowing this up. And I just need to choose the file. So this is delivery 22. I'm going to open that. I'm going to pick an import option. And this is where you might be unsure of what to use. We're going to use an import option that's called refman RIS. It's just the RIS file that we're bringing through. And admittedly, this does not appear automatically in your import options. It needs to be selected. And you can do that via the select favorites menu that's here. There is a very large list of import options that happens to be available. So again, this is quite extensive. But you'll want to select refman RIS from this huge list of import options and copy it into my favorites. So once you highlight it and hit the copy to favorites button, that'll move it into this favorites dropdown so it's easy to select in the future. So once we've added it to the favorites, you can then use the import option dropdown, select refman RIS, and then you can choose where you want it to go in EndNote. I do recommend putting your items in a particular folder. If you click the drop down here, you can see I do have a few different folders that are attached. So different folders or groups. I'm going to make a brand new group in this case. Once I say new group and I hit the import button, it's going to give me the chance to give this new group a name. And I'm going to call this pet therapy. That way I can distinguish it quite easily from the other groups that I have within EndNote Online. So I'll say OK. And at this point, it should import the records. I brought those 7 references into the pet therapy group. And now I know that import was done and done successfully. So how is this going to look? If I click on my references, there's a few ways I'd be able to see the items. In my references, this is going to show everything that you have in EndNote Online. Be patient with this. It does take a little while for it to load. If you didn't happen to put your items in a group, there is a sort by feature that is here. If you do click on that drop down, usually the easiest way to call the items that you've put into your EndNote Online account most recently is to select added to library, newest to oldest. So I'll click that now. And once this loads, the items that I just brought into EndNote Online should appear at the very top of the screen. There we go. That's starting to appear now. So that works pretty well. Here's an important thing to note, and one of the reasons why I like to put things directly in a group right from the jump. If we look at the last updated field, notice it is a date only field. There's not a timestamp with it. So if you move multiple batches of citations into EndNote Online in a single day, it can be a little hard to distinguish them from each other. So I feel it's very, very helpful to put the items immediately into a group. That way you don't lose track of them. And you can see, again, I do have a number of groups listed here. And here's pet therapy. I'll click on that now. So that will bring up just these 7 items that I placed in the group itself. Now, one wonderful thing about EndNote Online is that you can share citations with other people. You can do that via the Organize feature in EndNote Online. And I'm going to click on the Manage My Groups section here. And typically, this is where you're going to either rename groups, delete them if you no longer have a use for them, or manage sharing. Manage sharing is probably the most often used feature here, of course. And if we say we want to start sharing this group, it will then prompt us to enter email addresses. So if you did want to share this with anyone in particular, you could add all of the various email addresses here. If you did have a text file with various email addresses, just make sure that they are separated by commas. If you're entering them in the field here, just hit the return key to separate the addresses. And you can determine what kind of privileges that you give to the people you're sharing this with. You can give them read-only privileges or read and write privileges so they can alter the group. And EndNote Online really tries to call this out. They do let you know that attachments won't be shared regardless of access privileges. So if you do attach PDFs to your EndNote Online records, it's wonderful as a backup. It's wonderful for your basic share, but PDFs don't go across with that. And the reason why EndNote Online does have to protect itself a great deal. Certainly if somebody wanted to share their EndNote library with somebody outside of the Drexel institution, they might not necessarily have the rights to be able to view those items. Copyright starts to be a problem and that sort of thing. And that's why EndNote won't allow that attachment to be shared. They are protecting themselves just in case they can't become a file distributor. That would look badly on them in the legal sense. And that's why we have that type of restriction that we're seeing here. So I do want to make sure to call that out and make sure that you are aware of that. All right, I'm not going to fully share a group now, but if we were going to, we would apply. That would send out the invite to everybody via email, and that would work well. For today, though, I'm just going to close this window. I'm going to go back to my references and go into the pet therapy section. At this point, I believe it would be best to show you how this is going to work with Microsoft Word. I'll show you how to insert citations into a Word document, and then I'll talk a bit about EndNote desktop integration. All right, I've got Word open in the background, so I'm just going to call that up on screen. And what I'd like to do first is actually save this document, and I'm going to save it right on my desktop. It's going to be something that I get rid of kind of easily later on, but I'm going to call this demonstration. EndNote, and also use today's date. I like versioning my documents, that way I can easily come back and figure out, you know, if I made a mistake or anything like that, I can go back to an earlier format of the document, and that can be really helpful. So versioning this and versioning any documents you make, it's always advisable. Also note that I'm putting the word EndNote in here. I'll talk about that a little later, but it's a personal naming convention that I do because EndNote puts something called field codes into Microsoft Word in order to have the citations work. We'll get into that in just a bit. But let's pretend we're writing a paper. I can't type today. Something's wrong with me. And of course, you can tell this is a very, very deep conversation, of course, here. But let's say we're using words that we need to cite. We start paraphrasing. And say we're paraphrasing another author's words. We're not doing verbatim what they would say, but we're expressing the themes, the same things that they're expressing in their papers. And we're making sure to give them credit and also back up what we're hoping to assert within our own paper. So in this case, if I want to insert a citation, there's just a bit of setup you'll need to take care of. If you've installed Cite While You Write, there will be an EndNote tab on your Microsoft Word menu. I'm going to click on that. And you can see that EndNote is trying to authorize, right? Once it does so, it means that it's connected to my EndNote Online account. If you happen to be using both the desktop product and EndNote Online, you're going to need to tell Microsoft Word which one you're drawing the citation data from. And you can do that in the EndNote menu in the Preferences section. I'm clicking on Preferences, and there's an Application tab that's here. If you mark Application, there is a toggle so you can change between EndNote and EndNote the desktop product and EndNote Online. This is also where you'll put in your email address and the password for your account so it can connect with EndNote Online. Once we say OK, it will establish that connection. And at this point, I want to put in a citation. So I can always kind of toggle back and forth to my EndNote Online product. And let's say I want to associate that paraphrase statement with scorzato. So I'll click back into Word. I'll insert my citation. And I need to find scorzato, so I do need to type it in. Click Find. If it finds that author, great. We'll now insert. And you do have some options for your insert. You can insert the citation fully. You could exclude the author or exclude the year. So depending on what you want to do, in this case, I'm just going to do the plain insert to insert all of the information. That places the scorzato in-text citation in the correct place, exactly where I had my cursor. And also, you can see that it's generating the end of text citation. So we're getting our references here too. Now, this is where we get into some fun stuff. You might see that the term works cited is here, right? Like, I don't want that. I want to alter it. Maybe you want to make sure that your items are double spaced. Sure. You can do that via the bibliography tool that's here within EndNote. And you should see the language configure bibliography. Admittedly, this does look a bit different on a Mac. You're not going to see the same icons that I have here in Windows, but you should see the phrase configure bibliography. And when you click into that, this is where you can change your output style. So admittedly, I have APA 6 and JAMA loaded here at the moment. Also, this is where we can affect layout. If you want to change what style font you have, I have Calibri here at the moment, but if I wanted this to be in, basic Times New Roman, sure. If I want to change my font size, I can do that here. Bibliography title, yeah, well, it's not going to be right in this case. We're just going to put references. And our line spacing, we can change to double. Once we say OK, it will alter that and change everything. Admittedly, I kind of joke that EndNote is a mom, and it's all about talking to mom properly to let her know exactly where you're going, what you're doing. Otherwise, mom gets a little upset. But as long as you use the tools that are here directly within the EndNote toolbar, you're going to be able to do that. If you do try altering the references here by hand, for example, we see that all the information is capitalized in the title. If you're very familiar with APA, that's not typical APA style. So that's something we would have to communicate with EndNote to be able to take a look and see why that's happening, why that's occurring. If we fix that manually, it will revert. And it reverts as soon as a new citation is placed in the paper or the update citations and bibliography button is hit. So like any citation tool, EndNote is only as good as the data that happens to come into it. So if I look at my citations within EndNote Online, that's going to be an important thing to examine. And right here, right, we see the Ivano Scorzato information, and it came in from the database with all of these words pre-capitalized. That's why we're seeing that echoed in the Microsoft Word paper. So it is a bit annoying, but one of the things we could do is actually click into the reference itself, and you could alter the information that's here. Admittedly, in the desktop product, there are more features that you could utilize to assist with this that are a bit more advanced, but we could alter this by hand, right? I'm going in, I'm changing the record. Most of the other citations look good, but this one looks bizarre. So again, we can fix this pretty quickly. It's not a lot of work, but it is a little annoying. So I'm going in, I'm making these changes. I'll save this. And now if I go back into Word and I update the citations and bibliography, I think I do need to do a little bit of a restart because it's probably not aware that I've made those changes just yet, but I should be able to do the fix at that point. And here's a big thing. If EndNote or Word happens to get hung up at all, just restart the products. That usually solves everything. For some reason it doesn't. That's a good reason to send me an email. And I make sure to share my email a great deal, but just in case, I'm going to put it at the very bottom of this paper. It's just gc24@drexel.edu. And certainly you can always email me if you have a question about EndNote, something that's really peculiar, that's acting up. If something's acting bizarrely, please let me know. You can always send me a screenshot and I'm going to do my best to help. Now, let's just try inserting a few more references here. Maybe we're doing something like a direct quote, and we're putting in author's words verbatim. So we're using the exact wording that was used by the author. So we can still do this, and I'm going to select another item here from our references. In this case, why don't we try something that appears to be hopefully formatted a little nicer. We'll try a Namalwar here. And I'll insert this. Great, that placed that in the paper. If I look down into the references, it put it in properly in terms of alphabetical order. And you can see the data here does indeed look a lot better. So it echoes here in the reference list much better as well. Good data, great output. Now, I've got to put a page number in. And as I was saying, like if you do click on the citations, note that the whole thing's highlighted. So that tells you that it still has a connection with EndNote. If we wanted to insert a page number with something like this, we still need to talk to EndNote. So I'm going to edit the citation. And we have a few different ways we can add information to this. And note that we can also exclude the author or exclude the year from this page. But we could put a particular page in. And just as an example, I'm going to put, page 89. I'll say OK. And it will know to echo APA format and put in that P dot there. Now, of course, why do we need to talk back and forth with EndNote? Well, in some cases, you make a paper, say you're doing some professional publishing, and you need to change styles. What's great about this is I can automatically flip this into a different style like JAMA. I get my superscript numbers, and it knows that in JAMA, no, it doesn't use page numbers in those style of citations. So it will at least change that with the in-text cites, which is very, very helpful. I'm not going to get into the complexities of AMA or JAMA style today, but I'm going to flip back into APA at the moment. And of course, if you do need to select a different style and utilize something other than what I've talked about today, there is a way to select another style. And we would have to go in and be able to actually select this directly from EndNote Web itself. There are ways to do this, but note that it only brings up the things we commonly use or we've told it to use in EndNote Online. The whole list of styles are not there. So there are some differences between the desktop product and the online product. I'm going to stick with that APA 6 here and put that in play. So admittedly, with the application, the EndNote Online product, the Cite While You Write tool is very similar from the desktop product, but it is not as full featured. It's really close, but there are some little differences with it. Now, let me talk about this document and these field codes that I hinted at before. So by clicking on these items, they're all highlighted, right? We can tell that there's a connection between these items in our Word paper and EndNote Online. So if we were to alter this, if we updated the citation and bibliography, it's going to write over all of our updates. So typically, before we need to send this in, either for a grade or send it in for a publication, we need to divorce this from EndNote Online. And how we would do that is via the Convert Citations and Bibliography feature here. For Mac users, this is going to look a little different, but you should see the Convert to Plain Text feature here just written out in your EndNote menu. This does not mean plain text in the usual manner that the term plain text is used. What this will do is actually sever the connection between Microsoft Word and EndNote Online, the site while you write portion. It will turn it into a normal Word document. I'm using the term normal loosely here. But this is why I was really careful with naming this file as I did in the beginning. I made sure to put the word EndNote in it. Because if we convert and then convert this to plain text, this is going to make a brand new Word document. I'm going to say OK. And what this does is it makes, again, this whole brand new Word document. You can see this is called document 2 at the top of the screen. And if I click on those citations, they're no longer appearing grayed out. They are not linked back and forth to EndNote. So if I really had to make a quick edit, something where I wasn't sure of how to move forward using EndNote to make the change come through, I could at least do this by hand really quickly, send it out to a publisher, or submit it for a grade. So this is useful in a number of cases, but make sure to hang on to your actual EndNote tag document. So if you do need to go in and make any further changes and further edits, you can always go back to that. And I think that's where it's really helpful. So when I do save this, I'll do another save as, I'll throw it on my desktop. I'll call this demonstration. But instead of using this full file name, I tend to remove the word EndNote and put the word submission. So I know this is the one that's divorced from EndNote. So I'll save that. That's good. That way I can tell my files apart from each other. So whatever you want to do in terms of a naming convention, it's fine. Just stick with something. So this way you can know which one's attached to EndNote and which one's free of EndNote. Because they're a little different from each other. If you tend to give somebody the EndNote document, it still has all those codes in it. It's a little weird and it's hard to work with. And I can see Dr. Holt is talking about that right now, right? So we see that mentioned in chat. So there are some ways of dealing with this too, right? What if you've got a buddy that wants to, that's going to give you a hand with some editing? There's a few ways to address it. If they're an EndNote user, there are ways to send different documents alongside of it. If you want to share your EndNote online library with them, they can do that and go back and forth and edit the document. But to be honest, I think that's a little bit of a pipe dream. It doesn't happen commonly. A lot of times we're asking somebody to edit our documents and they don't happen to be an EndNote user. So we've been playing around with a few different things and doing some testing behind the scenes here with my fellow librarians here at Hahnemann and at Drexel. And what we've been doing, and this has been working out pretty well for us, is when we're sending a document out and we really want somebody else to play around with it, we'll kind of change how the document looks. And instead of converting to plain text, we'll convert to unformatted citations. And you can see that what it does here is it changes the APA citation into the very, very basic squiggle brackets that are here. This way, if you've got a friend that's not using EndNote, that's editing your document, you can just say, hey, please don't touch the squiggle brackets, but anything else in there, yeah, please go in, track changes, that sort of thing. That's fine. That will all work okay. And if for some reason, they mess up part of your bracket, you can always throw that back in. Usually that's okay. And then watch if once you get the document back, we can convert. And actually, we're going to update the citations and bibliography here. Sorry. Update, not convert in that case. We can convert it back. So they can't do that because they don't have EndNote, but once it comes back onto your computer, you have it, you can update it and update the citations and bibliography to restore that connection. Now, admittedly, if you're working on several papers going back and forth, close it, close EndNote down, reopen everything fresh. Otherwise, things get confused. Wow, all right. We've been through a lot in these past 50 minutes here. I need to call EndNote Desktop back up on screen for a little bit, just to show everybody that's using EndNote Desktop, if they want to integrate it with EndNote Online, that yes, there's a way to do that. So let me bring up EndNote Desktop really quickly here. And we are using EndNote X8. We don't have access to EndNote X9 at this time. But we can integrate our library that's here on our desktop with EndNote Online via the edit feature and preferences. If you are a Mac user, this looks different. There will be an EndNote menu towards your upper left. If you click on EndNote, that's where you're going to find the preferences menu. And then in this tree of preferences, you'll want to go to sync. And this is where you can put your email address and your password. Now, admittedly, this is a demonstration library, so I'm not going to sync it. But when you do enable sync, the desktop product's going to say like, hey, it's a good idea to make a copy of your library just in case things go wrong. Yes, I want to make sure to echo that. Definitely make a copy of your library or a backup just in case things go a bit wonky, and then perform the sync from there. Admittedly, with my EndNote desktop product and my full library that I have, I do have it backed up in 2 different places, just in case things go wrong. You know, if somebody steals my laptop, that's awful and that's dreadful. That's a really bad experience. But the big thing is I want to make sure that I don't lose my data. Data is worth way more to me than a laptop will ever be. So having those backups of the EndNote desktop library is really important, and either syncing it with your EndNote Online product and also, you know, putting it in another physical drive can be very worthwhile. One caution with your EndNote desktop files, if you do place them in the cloud, it's okay to store them in the cloud, but please don't work on them live in the cloud. That will usually corrupt your files. Make sure to bring those files back down onto your computer in order to work with them. You don't want to use the EndNote desktop product with a file that's placed in the cloud. It will definitely get wonky and corrupt. Wow, okay. I want to check in with everybody out there in Zoom today and see if anyone has any follow-up questions. Admittedly, if I can't answer them now, I'll certainly answer them via email in the very near future, and I'll try to do my best to solve any problems that you might have. Does anyone have any questions at the moment? Oh, yeah, and I admit, yeah, you're going to have questions after you start using the product a little bit. Um, but yes, no problem at all. All right. And Shannon's asking a great question here. And can we make our EndNote web library public? And you know, I don't think we can. I'm going to double check though. I've never been asked that question before. That's a great question. So, right, if I have my EndNote library here, I'm going to go into the Manage My Groups feature. And yeah, when I go to, there is the Manage Sharing part, but I don't think there's a way to just make this open to anybody. Yeah, well, we've got it. It just seems like there's ways to just make it very specific to specific email addresses, but I don't think there's a way just to make it generally open to everybody online in a public fashion. Cool, great question, Shannon. I have to ask context. Is there any reason, any particular reason that someone would want to do that? Maybe for like an instructor putting it out to a class, that sort of thing. Yep, I get that. And at that point, what I would probably do is generate a quick reference list, and I think that would probably work in its place and be able to put that document in a course shell. So if we did want to, there's a few ways to do this. Um, we can export these references to be able to give them to somebody. And this is where we can say, okay, format, export references. We could say a specific group at that point and choose a particular style. Admittedly, the export styles on here are your typical data styles here. So let me play around with this and that export feature. I think you would just want to do your straight bibliography in that case. And if we just format the bibliography, again, we could say references, pet therapy. Here's where we can choose APA 6, whatever style you're using, and then make this into HTML or rich text format from there. Would that work for the case that you're thinking of? Awesome. And by the way, I'm just thinking I didn't fully close the loop on where I would select bibliographic style, but this is where you can grab your favorites. So in EndNote Online, you would go Format, Bibliography, select your favorites, and this is where you can see all of the available styles that are here. So APA, JAMA are the ones I use the most, but depending on use, you might have a particular favorite that's over here too. Perhaps Chicago style, that sort of thing. Awesome. All right, we've got about 2 minutes left, so I want to see if anyone has any last minute questions before I shut our Zoom room down today. All right, it seems pretty quiet out there, so I'm going to assume everybody's doing okay. And again, if anyone wants to follow up with me at all, please email me directly. I'm right at gc24@drexel.edu. I'll be very, very happy to help out. Um, at this point, I'm going to stop our recording and I'm going to stop our share.